let's put it this way, the theme itself of the sort of the seductive woman who appears to be everything is beautiful and whole and then reveals to sort of have a very dark side too. This had been constant, actually right the way from the 18th century on. A lot of bel canto opera in Italy deals with these sort of figures, and of course the most famous example which really sort of transformed the operatic world was Verdi's La Traviata at the beginning of the 1850s, when La Traviata really took the idea of the whore with the heart of gold and made her into the very, very sympathetic central character of the opera. So what happened is that audiences, their moral sense would perhaps condemn Violetta, the central character in La Traviata, but at the same time, emotionally, they felt very, very strongly identified with her. And Manon itself is one of the most frequently set of all these stories. For example, Massenet's Manon is not the first. The first Manon Lescaut was written by a composer called Aubert, who was noted for writing grand operas, but he wrote a very entertaining and a very sort of vital Manon Lescaut that was first performed in the Opera Comique in around the 1840s, 1850s. And then Massenet came along, and then after this, Puccini came along. Puccini wrote his Manon Lescaut 10 years after Massenet's Manon, and Puccini felt that this was such a rich story, he felt that there was no danger that he was sort of somehow going to be eclipsed by Massenet's opera, and certainly he wasn't. Both Manon and Manon Lescaut have survived in the repertoire. But it's also been done in more modern times. For example, Hans Werner Henze wrote an opera called Boulevard Solitude, which takes the Manon theme into a more modern environment. There is, by the way, there have also been ballets. The earliest ballet on Manon was actually prior to the Aubert opera. The earliest ballet on Manon was written by Halévy sometime in the 1830s. And at the other end, there's been a very successful ballet of Manon that was first done at Covent Garden in the 1960s and has since gone all over the world. The interesting thing about that ballet Manon is it uses entirely music by Massenet, but no music from the actual opera. It's music taken from all of Massenet's other operas. In some ways there's probably a danger of people looking at this and saying it's old hat, but in actuality it was not old hat, because one of the great things Massenet could do was he could write scores that have a wonderful sort of freshness and spontaneity. Whereas in Italian opera, you get great sweeping melodies that tend to sort of drive the action forward, so you feel there's no way of getting out of it. In French opera, and particularly in Massenet, you have a more relaxed approach to the action. The music tends to really focus upon what goes on inside the characters' minds, in particular Manon and Des Grieux. Each of them have a couple of arias that are tremendously moving and call more upon the audience's empathy than they do upon other emotions. There are tremendous climactic moments. At the end of Act 3, when Manon and Des Grieux come together after they have been apart for a long time, and he's now a famous preacher, and she's a sort of a woman about town. They have this passionate climax to Act 3, which is very moving. And then even at the end of Act 4, the famous gambling scene. There's an ensemble that in size and complexity is worthy of Verdi, and also carries quite a strong melody with it. After Fue douce image, which is one of Des Grieux's arias, I find particularly moving. But actually, I say this about opera as a whole, I tend to actually prefer the duets and the ensembles to the solos. I always feel that that's where the real heart lies. And the Manon has a whole series of really very moving duets for both Manon and Des Grieux. Very powerful duet that also has strong the sentimental, nostalgic aspects to it as well, where we sort of sense that we've moved from the youth of Act Two to real middle age, passion and commitment, or failure to commit. One gets the sense that although the opera does last a few hours, these characters, we're tracing these characters through their whole life. And so the duet from Act 3 really is a duet that's really focuses upon powerful emotions that are felt but cannot be dealt with, and are both loved and hated by those who are feeling those emotions. Act 4 doesn't actually have, well, it has one or two nice little sort of exchanges between Manon and Des Grieux, but it isn't until we get to Act 5. We get to Act 5 and there's a long, the whole thing ends with about a 12-minute duet between Manon and Des Grieux, which ends up with her dying. And in sort of true musical theatre fashion, Massenet uses it to reprise all the themes that we have heard in the previous couple of hours. And this is what I find particularly moving. I always find the end of the opera is very moving, because you hear the music that they sang when they were young kids, and now we hear it as Manon is about to die. Now, even though she's probably only in her mid to late 20s when she dies, that you still get this strong sense of death being obviously belongs to age, and that she has herself achieved sort of a certain tragic old age. And actually, by recalling all this melody, Manon sort of really is elevated in our opinions of her. At the end, I think we feel profoundly moved by her situation. I'm Simon Williams. I am an emeritus professor from University of California, Santa Barbara, and I also review. Written many articles and a couple of books on opera. Opera has been one of the great occupations of my life.